welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. If you aren't already subscribed, make sure to do so below and get notified when the latest episodes come out. I'm Jim Morrison, and today we have Steve Sanders, owner of Appraisal Source. And you may not know his name, but you've seen his work already. We're going to be interviewing the guy that's in charge of the Buzztoons on the Appraisal Buzz. So Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to join you. I appreciate you having me on.
We really appreciate you joining us, and we've really been enjoying your comics that you've been submitting. I think that you do a fantastic job with those.
I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun. I love doing it.
Well, we'll get into the comics a little bit later. Let's start off. Tell us a little bit about your history in the industry, how you got into appraising and where you're located and all that.
Well, I'll start off with where I'm located. I'm in a little town called Wiggins, Mississippi. We're really big. We have about 4,500 to 5,000 people. We have about 15 to 18,000 people in the entire county. I cover a really wide range. I've got about 8 or 10 counties that I cover all or part of.
Wow.
But as far as how I got into the business, I took kind of a circuitous route to get here. It was not my planned career, but I was telling my dad about this interview yesterday, and he retired as an appraiser right before the pandemic. He'd been working in appraising for about 30 years, I guess, and finally decided to hang it up. But I went to school actually to be a draftsman. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a person that draws technical plans, and I did that. It's kind of funny how things come around. I chose that because it involved a pencil and paper, and I wanted to draw, and it never occurred to me that I could do art for a living. I don't know why. So that's what I took when I went to college. And my dad convinced me, because he'd gotten into real estate, he convinced me to take night classes, and I got a real estate sales license. And the company I was working for in 1992 went bankrupt and closed down.
Oh.
And so my dad said, well, you've got your license. Why don't you come work with me for a couple of weeks or a month until you can find something else? And so this is my 29th year. So I guess whenever I find something else to do, I'll move on. But so that's how I got into appraising. I just kind of fell into it. My dad was in the first group, at least here in the state of Mississippi, that got their licensing. Before that, appraisers didn't have to be licensed. And so my first class, his license number is actually 38.
Wow.
In the state of Mississippi. So he was on the front end. But my first class was his first rotation for CE after the first 2 years. And that was in 1992 or 93. So.
Wow. Well, that definitely is funny how you said that about being a draftsman. My wife is an architect, so she started out wanting to draw everything, and now it's all on computers, and she hasn't touched a pencil in a while, unless it's the iPad pen. But yeah.
I actually drew house plans for a while on the side. Me and a friend of mine who were in school together, we actually 8 or 10 houses where I live, kind of in my area, that we drew up. So I really enjoyed doing that.
Well, you're great at it. We're going to get into talking about the comic. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. Appraisers, what if you could inspect, photograph, and measure a home without leaving yours? With Remote Val, you get to harness the power of new technology without giving up your process or compromising on quality. With our easy-to-use software, you connect to the homeowner's phone and complete your inspection as you normally would. Remote Val lets you capture high-quality meta-tagged photos, take accurate measurements, and communicate directly with the homeowner to get the information you need. Remote Val is fast, easy to use, and completely free for appraisers. To see a demo of Remote Val in action, visit incenteram.com. Well, Steve, let's get into the comics. We've been loving your comics. How did you get into drawing the comics? Is that something you've always done, or is that something just that's come on in recent years?
I have always loved to draw. My mother was an amateur artist, and she was a painter. And I don't know if I just picked it up because she did it, but I've always been drawn toward art, and particularly, for whatever reason, comics. So when I was growing up, I loved Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes and all of those kind of comic strips. And then as I got older and got into, I guess, more adult themed comics, more of the political editorial cartooning. And I love that stuff. And I actually drew political cartoons for my local newspaper for probably 5 or 6 years, and loved that. That was a lot of fun, trying to come up with cartoons based on the issues of the day. But I've always loved to draw. Like I said, I've always been drawn to comics particularly. And so I've done that since I was in elementary school, probably. And in different ways, I've tried to do different things with it. I probably should have mentioned The Far Side, if you know Gary Larson's comic strip, The Far Side.
Yeah.
I guess I love his weird sense of humor. I'm kind of weird that way too.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes not everybody gets my jokes, but that's okay. But I love doing it. I've never really thought about making a living at it necessarily, but I would love to try and get more into that. I also do illustration. I've done a couple of children's books. They haven't been published yet, but still working on that.
Well,
But
one
I
of the things
just
that
love.
we like so
Go ahead.
much about having you is that you're an appraiser, so you know what an appraiser is going through. You know what's funny for an appraiser. In some of our Buzztoons in the past, the artists were artists, but they weren't appraisers. So we would transcribe like what we wanted the thoughts to be, but you already know what's funny for appraisers. So it's great for us because you can come up with ideas and send them to us, and we're like, oh, that's great, that's perfect. So we really appreciate it, and I just think you're an amazing artist too.
Well, I appreciate that. I've wondered because I'm in such a rural area. And all of my stuff it's a lot different than if you're in some metropolitan area somewhere. If it translates, if it's the same everywhere. And I think some of the principles are the same, but I probably come on some things that are a little different than other folks. And maybe I can make some comics about some of those in the future.
Yeah, and listeners out there, if you have some ideas, but you're not an artist, you can send them into us comments at Appraisal Buzz, and Steve will take a look at them and draw them up. So.
Oh yeah, I would love that. I'm a member of several appraiser groups on Facebook, and it's interesting to see some of the experiences that appraisers have. When you're going in and out of people's houses, there are some strange things that can occur.
Yeah,
So there's lots of material out there.
And in our magazine, we always have the crazy appraiser stories. It's great to see some of the crazy stories we hear from them. Well, Steve, let's take another commercial break, and I'll be right back with you. The Dictionary of Real Estate Appraisal 7th edition is the landmark text that reflects the depth and breadth of appraisal knowledge. Each entry, definition, and reference has been painstakingly researched and designed to reflect an expert understanding of issues that currently impact the profession. The new dictionary is an essential authoritative resource for all appraisers. To purchase, visit appraisalinstitute.org/dictionary7. All right, Steve, so I know you told us in the beginning that you covered a bunch of counties as a rural appraiser. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What it's like covering so much of Mississippi and having to drive all over the place. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that goes along with that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I said, I've kind of come to understand this a little more once I've connected with people all over the country through these Facebook groups and things like that. It's interesting. I do such a wide variety of properties. I see people who are doing 10, 15, 20 appraisals a week. And I'm doing good if I can do that many in a month. If I can do 20 appraisals in a month, I'm doing good because there's no cookie cutters. Everything is different.
Right.
I don't do anything that's the same. At any given time, for instance, tomorrow I'll be going to look at 75 acres of timberland.
Wow.
But I also do, properties, camp properties on the creek, just traditional residential properties in a subdivision. But it's rare that I have 3 comps within a mile. Most of my comps are going to be 8, 10, 15, even 20 or 30 miles away. So that does make for a lot of driving. It makes for a lot of traveling. It's a lot slower because everything's different. There's a lot of things that come into play there. You can't really settle in and there's no cookie cutters in a subdivision where you've got 200 units or 500 units or whatever. If we have a subdivision around that I'm working in, it's usually going to have 30 or 40 houses in it. Finding 3 of those that have sold in the last 6 months is just about impossible. So being in a rural area, it's tough. But the good thing about it is I get to cover a lot of area. I get to meet a lot of people. I get to see a lot of the countryside, and where I am, it's lots of woods and fields, and I enjoy that. That's
where we are on the East Coast, on the Eastern Shore. I always find it funny, when I talk to people further west, how big their states are. With us in 4 hours, we can start in Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. And so we can go through all those states. It's really crazy.
Yeah, we can't do that here. But we don't have the traffic that you have. So I can get a lot farther than you can in the same amount of time, probably.
That's true. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And We love the comics you've been doing. We have a new one coming out the Friday after this publishes. So we really appreciate those. And we look forward to seeing more of them.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I appreciate you guys being willing to publish those. And it's just been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much. And thanks to our listeners and our sponsors for helping us put these on. Appraisers, if you have an idea for a future Buzzcast or would like to be interviewed, reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com. Thanks and have a great day.